Let's look at the next question. The next question says, Taoist thought. Now, Taoism, Taoist, school of thought, Tao. He's a philosopher. Taoist thought focuses on non-action, spontaneity, humanism, and emptiness. An emphasis is placed on, that's not an apostrophe S, that's an is. Okay. An emphasis is placed on the link between people and nature, and that this link lessens the need for rules and order, leading one to a better understanding of the world. Okay, so this entire thing is your premise. Slightly complicated. Why? Because philosophy is often like that. They would give you various words that you don't connect to instantly, but you're just supposed to know the essence of it, right? So it focuses on non-action, spontaneity, and humanism and emptiness. It places the link between people and nature, and it lessens the need for rules and order, leading one to a better understanding of the world. All right. Okay, so now you're supposed to find the inference. Okay, now there was something called an assumption, there's something called a conclusion, then there is an inference. Okay, which is not the next step forward like a conclusion is, or what is going to happen, what in the future, sort of a thing, as conclusions always are, but most often are. But an inference is that thing that you can, let's say, at the risk of sounding redundant, an inference is something that you can infer from an argument, right? This is something that you can derive from an argument, right? Let's see what you can infer from the above arguments. It says, following rules and order leads to a misunderstanding of the universe. Is it saying something of that sort? It's just saying that the emphasis is placed on people and nature, and the link lessens the need for rules and order. That's it. But following rules and order leads to misunderstanding beyond the scope of our argument, therefore not the inference that we're looking for. Taoist philosophy highlights the symbolic relationship between man and nature, which lessens the need for rules and structure. Rules and order, sort of written here, link between people and nature. It highlights the symbiotic relationship between man and nature, sort of same thing in essence, and lessens the need. Perfect. B looks like an answer choice over here, can be an answer. Let's look at C. Says, Taoist philosophy highlights the non-conformity to rules and structure that is possible through a symbiotic relationship between man and nature. Now, what you've got to understand is that it was highlighting not the non-conformity, but look here, emphasis on the link between people and nature. Okay, here was the emphasis and not on the non-conformity. They're saying that the non-conformity is a result of the relationship, and the philosophy in itself does not highlight the non-conformity. It's, let's say, A and leads to B. This is the relationship part of it, which exists between man and nature, and this is non-conformity to rules, right? But what is option C saying? Option C is paying or the emphasis on B, which is non-conformity to rules, and saying it is possible through A. Fancy way of saying the same thing, but then the emphasis part is wrong, which is placed here in B but was in A, therefore not the answer choice that we're looking for, right? Did you understand what we did over here? C is therefore not an answer choice because the highlight part of it is wrong. Highlight or emphasis is placed on this bit. Yeah, perfect. Let's look at D. Non-action, spontaneity, humanism, and emptiness enable rational thinking. Can you Can you assume that? Can you infer that? It says it focuses on non-action, spontaneity, humanism, and emptiness. Full stop. Its emphasis is laid on the link between people and nature. Humanism, spontaneity, non-action, emptiness, they're left there. How do they enable rational thinking is beyond the scope of the argument, therefore not our answer. E. Humans dwell in their ivory towers, the mirage of rules. Again, not the answer we're looking for, right? Even if they're trying a metaphor over here, which can be, you know, dwelling in ivory tower metaphor. You know what a metaphor is, right? We just do that in a bit, but even if they're trying to do the metaphor over here, how does it signify mirage of rules and etc.? Outside the scope of our argument, right? But on a quick note, let's completely look at what a metaphor is. Okay, so have you heard of this? Have you heard of these fancy terms like they're called the figures of speech? We're slightly away from our class. We're staying away from our class, but then we'll quickly do the figures of speech. Just two members of it. They're not parts of speech, okay? They're not nouns, pronouns, etc. They're figures of speech. They are poetic licenses. They are words that are used to beautify a language, right? So when you were doing your figures of speech back in school, you would have heard of this certain term called simile. I think I've spelled it right, yes. So there's a certain figure of speech called the simile, which uses words such as like, as, and you know, you have things like as sweet as let's say honey, or as daft as maybe a brush, or as, you know, dumb as a doormat, and things like that, right? Those are similes. If I were to not go into the conventional simile and let's say, you know, make a general sentence. This is right out of Renan Martin. Pick that book up. It's fabulous. Okay. So if you say things like he fought like a lion in the battle. This part, which is attributing the quality of a lion to him by the aid of a word called like, is the simile part of it. Okay, but there's another way of saying the same thing by aid of a metaphor. How are you going to be able to say it? With this. When you say he was a lion in the battle, right? So you're not saying that he fought like a lion. You are saying that he was a lion. Can you see the subtle difference over there? When you are saying like you are comparing him. But when you're saying he was a lion, you're fusing the two. You're attributing the quality of a lion into him by fusion. But when you're using a simile, you're using comparison almost, right? And this is what the difference between a simile and a metaphor is, right? Awesome.